Well, I'd love to hear a little bit more about a few of the stories that have shaped your life as a person and a founder.
Yes, absolutely. So I am originally Syrian, born in Damascus. And really what shaped my story, there are about 3 stories that I can give you that shaped my story and what made me who I am and what made me want to do what I want to do and what I do. So believe it or not, I've always been entrepreneurial and I didn't actually know it. And so the first story that really shaped my life was when I was a kid, like back in Syria, in Damascus. My family, my father's a businessman, my grandfather's a businessman, my uncles, every single one, they're entrepreneurs, business people, so like I grew up around that sort of environment. We didn't have the choice where like in the summertime, like you're either going to school or you work. So you have to pick one or the other, like you can. And in many cases, I actually picked both. I would study and work. So early on, like you're brought up like into that environment, even when you were like child. So I would go with my father to his shop, and like you're engaging with a lot of these business people. But at one point in my life, my dad thought that it would be good to give me a job that is really harsh. Because he's like, okay, if he works at a harsh environment, he's going to become a better man. He'll be able to handle things more effectively. So my uncle owned a chicken factory. Like this is everything from literally like raising the chicken, hatchery, all the way to slaughterhouse, the whole mechanism.
The chicken value chain.
The chicken value chain, exactly. So anyway, my dad that's my dad's uncle. He goes to him and he goes like, okay, so like Moe is looking for a job. He wants to work. And then he tells him behind the scenes, I knew this later, that like they basically scripted a job that's the most difficult job that not even a single person would actually normally get it. So they put me in every difficult place, like literally. I'm like, so anyway, I'm working in this and it sucks. It's really terrible, like you stink and all of this. But you learn quite a lot of different things. And as a process, what ends up happening is I'm working with the chicken, so I have access to really high quality chicken. So I bring home some of these chicken. My dad tells my aunts, and then aunts tells their neighbor. And before I know it, I'm like transferring 100 kilos of chicken on a daily basis. And I'm like this little kid and I'm carrying these like weights of chicken. And I'm like, this sucks. But you're not going to tell my aunt, I'm sorry, aunt, I can't deliver it for you because, like you can't do that. And then one day, like I delivered for my aunt the chicken, and this like really big chicken. And so my aunt is cutting them and I see she's doing a lot of work cutting them off. And I'm like, aunt, like, what if I get you this already sorted out, cut in pieces, and this or like covered and packaged in a very nice way? So you take it, you put it in the freezer, and off you go. Would you pay me like 10 Syrian pounds per kilo? And she's like, hell yeah, 100% I would. And then that's where my like entrepreneurial mind started hitting. I'm like, wait a second, I can make a lot of money from this. So back at the factory, they do this, but at large scale. So like they would do tons on a daily basis. So if I threw 100 kilos, it just goes through, like they don't even notice. So I started doing this. And then that became more convenient. And then my aunt started telling her neighbor, that was not a thing, by the way, like at the time, like you can only buy whole chicken at the time in Syria. So
Innovation,
yeah, exactly. Because like that manufacturing was for restaurants and for
Yes,
like, it goes into the production lines, like it's not to be sold for individuals. It wasn't a thing. At least in Syria, it wasn't a thing. And then, so my aunt tells her name. My aunt is one of I love her to death. She's amazing. But she has a lot of big circles. So word of mouth. She started telling everybody, and then everybody started. And before you know it, I'm like selling. And I swear to God, I thought that I was stealing money. Because I was making so much money, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with it. And I'm like, I can't show it to my dad. I guess. So that kind of like was one story that like kind of made me understand like there's a problem, you find a solution for, people would be willing to pay money for it. And it was a good lesson at an early stage. But really the thing that really got me to where I am today is my love for anything technology, and I love science so much, and technology. I love to understand how thing works. So early on when I was a child, I got in love with electronics. So I started tinkering with electronics, like building my own circuits and like solving different problems. And one thing that really shaped the reason why I immigrated and I came to Canada was because of this story. It's like the rumbling of the starting point of that. So back in Damascus, Syria was basically communist at the time. It was pretty bad. Of course, I knew a little, because there are certain things you're
And
not
you were
allowed
a
to.
chicken capitalist.
Yeah, I was a chicken capitalist, exactly. My family, they were all capitalists. So like my family was not the family that was welcome in, like, at the time. We were actually pretty persecuted even after. During that time, you didn't have running water, so you have to essentially, the government will get you water at a certain time, and sometimes you have many days that you don't get water. And then you had to pump the water from the bottom of the building to the tanks so that you could have a reserve. And that process was a pain, because you essentially have to first figure out if there is water. And they give you a schedule on the TV. They say like, oh, this area, they're going to be like, at this time there's going to be water. But it's not always the case. They'll say like, it's at 10 o'clock, but it actually arrives at 10:30. So you have to check if that there's water, because if there isn't and you turn on the pump, it'll burn. And then you have to also make sure that the tank is empty, because if the tank is full, you turn on the pump, there's nothing to go, it'll blow up. It's really bad. So usually people you'll start shouting to each other, there's water, there's no water, turn it on, turn it off, and they're shouting. And this is like very common in the area. You start hearing it. There's so much noise, like. So I thought, I'm like, there has to be a better way that makes this a lot better. So I created a device, two devices actually, that communicate with each other. So if there is a water, you install the first one on a pump, you install the other one on a tank, and it just works. There's like no need for human communication. It just works. So my grandfather was the biggest believer in my inventions, and he was like, do it. Make it work, like put it on, and like he believed in me, and of course, it's a big risk, because if you go out of water if it doesn't work. So I put it on and it works, and it solved that problem. So my grandfather then tells the neighbor started asking for orders. I started doing it myself. And it was all me, like I built the whole thing. Like I did the circuit, I drew it down, like and solved it. And I used to also put signatures inside my designs. Certain things that means nothing, but I know it's my design. So sold a couple, started getting like a bunch of orders, and I would go and I put them on, and like and it felt amazing. It felt really amazing. It's not, you're making money, but it's not the money that made me feel really. It was the fact that you actually solved a problem, and you made the life of people better. So one day, in electronic market, we had an electronic market in Damascus. I go there and I want to buy my like little devices, and then I see a really good-looking device that's like looks like exactly like my idea. So I panic, like any founder, you're like, this is what I made, and then I buy it. I go home, I open it. It's my design, and I know it's my design because they added the thing that doesn't do anything. So, and I'm like, that sucks. So I actually remember I went to my dad. I was crying and I brought it to my dad. My dad doesn't know what I'm showing. I'm like, look, this is my design. And he was like, what do you mean? I'm like, they stole it. They stole it. I want to sue them. And he was like, where you think yourself? You think you're in the U.S.? We can't sue them. So the company turns out to be like one of the like close to the government companies. They essentially like mass produced it. And so my dad was like, just make another thing. And I'm like, this sucks, like I don't want to, like, this sucks. This is never gonna, it's like always the same, like, and I started noticing the injustice, and I started like coming up with, I'm like, I can't live here. I need to go. I need to leave. And US and Canada was like my top pick. And then I migrated to Canada.
Okay. And it sounds like in Canada, you started tinkering with software. And so what was your first software product? And then maybe how did that arc into what you're doing today?
I started working in Canada for a school, grade school, and I was the head of lead engineer, and I was tasked to build the software that manages the school from the ground up. This is everything to do from students coming into the school all the way to graduation, and then everything in between. This is like managing the staff, managing payroll, managing invoices. And it was it took me a long time to complete the whole thing. And this is at the time, by the way, where like we had our own racks, like we had our own server.
Yeah.
I built our own network. Excel was a thing and Access was a thing, like it was around that time, like you shared files and like if you had two people opening the same file, they corrupt. So yeah, I started building that software. And really there's a story there that taught me a lesson that I never forget. And I still use that lesson in everything I do today. And we used to have this really hardworking single mother. She used to be in finance. She takes care of like collecting money, making sure that the finances, it's like CFO. And she would work 7 days a week, like never takes a time off. She's working like 10, sometimes 12 hours a day, on and on and on, like super dedicated woman, like I have a huge respect for her. And we built this software that's like so much better. And I knew it's so much better because like, it's not because I designed it. I know factually, I'm an engineer, like I know it's better. And I found in the old systems many leakage. And of course, like you have a system that's Excel and Access and like you're gonna miss a lot of things. So this system was complete in the sense of a SaaS. I told her, I'm like, okay, we have the system. I trained her on the system and she wouldn't use it. So I do more training, and she kept using the old system. So on the old system, whenever she uses the old system, I have to resync with the new system, remigrate. It's a lot of work to do that. Sometimes a week of work, I have to do this. And then when I'm done, I'm like, okay, you have to now use the new system. I'm not kidding. And then she would always come back. So one day I did the unspoken. I basically cut off the old system entirely. And I swear I'm in my office and she comes screaming. She's like, I can't access this because I put a message, contact Moe. And she came to my office, went to the CEO. She was really upset. CEO comes to me, he's like, really, you cut off the system? I'm like, I cut off the system. I told him I deleted it, but I actually didn't delete it, like that. And so she was like, okay, well, you have to work with her, like you have to get her comfortable. So I started doing this, and in time she started using it, and then slowly she started working like 6 days a week, and then 5 days a week, and then 8 hours, and then in 2 months she took her first vacation, and she came to me thanking me for that because like for 2 years she wasn't able to take a vacation.
Yeah.
So I failed her because I was telling her that like you need to use the system. And it's just better for you. But she had no reason to believe that it is better. She had huge responsibilities in her hand, and she needed to deliver that responsibility, and she felt that deeply. And all I was telling her is that this is better, but I have no proven point. So she didn't not trust the system. She didn't trust an unproven system. And that's really important. That's like a distinction that I take with me, is like, in order for people to adopt the systems that we design as engineers, they need to trust it. And you can't just tell them, trust me, it's good. It needs to be a process. There's a lot of education that goes into it. There's a lot of talking. Like, I didn't sit down with her to see why, I was just telling her, you should use it. It's better for you. It's like so much, look here, I'm showing you here. Yeah. But I didn't sit down to see, like, where is her anxiety? Where are the points where she felt anxious? Because there were true anxieties in her, like when she came screaming, she's not a lady that screams. And she was screaming, like she was literally screaming. And it taught me a lesson of like that you have to value the people that we serve. They have deep emotions to the way they do things. And if we don't handle these emotions and we ignore them, we will not be able to build better products, because at the end of the day, the product we build are product designed for human.
Yeah.
And human are complicated. It's their emotions.
Hey, this is Ben Kesnoka, co-founder of Village Global. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Village Global podcast, where we go deep on all of the biggest topics in tech. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can check us out on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love to see you for the next one.